Welcome, everyone, to the first afternoon session on Tuesday, which means everybody's in a food coma. Our panel is going to do everything they can to try to alleviate that food coma and make this as exciting and interesting for you as they possibly can. My name is Dave Neeson. I'm the CIO at Greenberg Glusker. I'm also on conference committee, and I'm helping the individual that helped plan this session because he is not here today. The session is What's New with VDI and App Delivery. If you are a tweeter, the hashtag is hashtag ILTAG59, ILTAG59. Just a couple of housekeeping items that you've probably heard every other time you've been in one of these sessions. Please turn off your phone, or at least turn the volume off of your phone. The session is being recorded, so if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll try to get to you with this device as quickly as I can so that you can read the question into the mic. That way the people at home listening after conference hear the question and the answer. Otherwise they won't. Please complete an evaluation after the session. It's the only way ILTA knows how to do programming is when we get feedback from you on what you like and what you don't like. So please rate the session afterwards. You can do that in the app. And if there are no other questions, or before we begin, I will introduce our panel of Lisa Stone, Joseph Jabor, and Mark.
Say it.
Yeah, Mark.
Mark Margavicius.
Margavicius.
Sorry, Mark.
That's okay.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I put my bio up there because my marketing director loves that photograph. So that's me.
It's a good one.
Joe?
Hi, I'm Joe.
And here we go to Mark. Hang on. It's coming. Technical support. Here, you do it. See if you have better clicker luck.
We're off to a great start here.
There you go. There's Mark.
Okay, does it work?
Also a very nice picture.
We're good? All right, we're good. So, first of all, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. This is a panel discussion. It is intended to be an interactive session with us discussing a variety of topics around VDI and app delivery. We're going to speak for a few minutes each, and then upon which we will go into a variety of questions. We have a ton of really good questions that we think we came up with in advance, but I think it's equally important, if not more so, that if you have questions, please, by all means, let's make this an interactive conversation and discussion. It will most certainly help facilitate a great way to go. So I want to start first. By the way, I'm a director of strategy here at VMware. My role is in the role of end-user computing, where my job is predominantly to help customers understand the vision and direction as to where end-user computing is headed. Prior to me starting at VMware about 3 years ago, I used to work for Gartner Research. I was their lead analyst inside of EUC. And so I did that for about 17 years, so I'm very familiar with what is happening in the end-user computing space. And when I was asked to talk today, I was asked to talk about some of the things that are happening more directionally, maybe at the 50,000-foot level. And as we go through, we'll get into some of the details about exactly how the market is evolving around VDI, app delivery, and other aspects of end-user computing. So the first thing I'd like to start with is a little bit of statistical kind of data points. This should not be new for any of you, right? We have seen across all industries, not just yours, a huge amount of interest and attention applied to the mobile space. That people today work differently is the fundamental point of emphasis. And that when you think about how people work, positioning the delivery of applications and services governed by a location or a device is a strategy and an architecture that is somewhat antiquated today. Okay? That doesn't make what we do today irrelevant as it relates to things like app delivery and VDI. It just means that as we deliver and build out a platform for our users to deliver in a hybrid mobile central way, we have to think beyond just what we've always done. And so the way we think about it at VMware, it really comes down to three very basic things that I think is pretty universal across any organization that we speak to. We talk about the needs of our individual workers, the people that are basically the feet on the street, who are our guests, our servants, our people that we're trying to serve as best as we possibly can. They're the customer base that we're really focused on. And so it's a perspective of not just provisioning them as individuals, but meeting their needs from an app and an individual basis as well. Secondly, apps run the business. There's no doubt about it when we think about the value of what IT provides. Things like infrastructure and providing access to services, et cetera, is important. But at the end of the day, applications and the provisioning of applications runs the businesses that we're talking about. And so how do you provision access to apps in the right way, the right types of apps, and provision them in a way that is highly secure, manageable, et cetera? And then fundamentally, the newest trend, like I already talked to, devices is huge. It's no longer just a PC or a thin client. On average today, if you take all the organizational workers that we've seen in the market, anywhere between 2.7 to 3.1 devices is what most people carry in their hands today. My friends at Gartner tell me that over the next 3 to 5 years, that number is expected to double. And so if you think about the diversity of the landscape in terms of types of devices, users, and applications, the architecture and the strategy from an IT point of view has to change to accommodate these kind of requests and these needs. So the way we kind of evolve this, we're moving, right? We're moving away from what I would say IT-defined static world in which we kind of are prescriptive in provisioning users with the things that they require, all of which is still very much needed today and important to the functions that they do. But we think about a new framework that we refer to as a digital workspace. Digital workspace is really about the enablement of users, any user to any application over any device, over any network at any time, in a highly reliable, secure way at low cost that delivers excellent SLAs. That's really kind of the vision that we're talking about when we think about a digital workspace. And when we do that, and if we're successful in the market, right, not just us as a vendor, but customers who are actually practitioners of our products, that in general, you end up devising new business models that can be created that we aren't doing today. You process more forms, you do more claims, you can actually be more responsive to your clients. Things happen more dynamically, and it's all because we're more responsive and we have the technologies that actually allow us to define and build new workflows that really don't exist today. So one of the key technologies that we believe is extremely important as we kind of get into this realm of diversity is the concept of unifying the endpoint management of what users require. If you agree or if you only partially agree with the growth of the mobile landscape and the device diversity that's hitting the market, having separate infrastructures that in essence deliver solutions for management is really difficult to do and justify. Today we think about the delivery of Windows with Windows management. We think about mobile with mobile management, cloud management, app management, infrastructure management, right? And all of these different silos of IT in reality tend to be pretty costly from an operational and an OpEx point of view. So our belief is that you need to really think about a more unified strategy that allows you to do a more unified approach to the delivery of how users actually think about their devices. And so for management, for us, endpoint management is really about security and the management of the platform. And today we do that in mobile space, right? Things like our product AirWatch, or Citrix has products like Zen Mobile, and there's Mobile Iron and other products out on the market. In essence, that handle the mobile space, but we handle Windows separately. Under unified management, we think about a common infrastructure that applies to all the devices that in essence exist within a workplace. That's really what we're trying to do. And so it builds an infrastructure of value that is highly leverageable across all your users in a highly meaningful way at low cost because it is the common platform. And so for us, the product is called Workspace ONE. I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm just telling you that in terms of management of end-user computing, the idea of bringing together desktop and mobile is very much a trend that we believe is just at the very beginning. We're at the genesis stages of this occurring. 5 years from now, having separate mobile and desktop infrastructure for management really won't be around. So when you do that, you really think about an idea that you can actually unify across all your platforms, all your devices, and all your use cases. And so we think of unified management really providing great value, that a managed workspace is really key, and that will really meet the needs across all of your use cases when you think about the experiences that individuals will have. regardless of the scenario, right? We think about energy computing as a very broad spectrum of technologies, from mobility, bring your own devices, to highly secure, well-managed thin clients, or PCs that sit in between, right? And other devices that are evolving in this space. The idea is that if you can define an architecture or a strategy that manages across all those platforms, you in essence then can deliver what is really required for users. And as part of that, how do you handle legacy, which we will talk about at much greater length as we proceed here, specifically to the areas of app delivery within Windows and how you handle VDI, as well as some of the higher-end workloads that we're talking about that require more compute performance. And so I think my time is up for the intro, for my slides. I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Hey, thank you. Hi, can everybody hear me? So my name is Lisa Stone. I'm a client systems architect at Cornerstone.IT. And I'm here to talk today about Citrix application layering, app layering. So we have this joke at my firm. I'm always talking to my colleagues, and I say, what's the crack? What's the thing I got to have? What new innovative technology is out there that's going to make a VDI deployment easier, faster, better management? So we have this saying, you know, what's the crack? Show me the crack, right? What do I have to have? And this year, for me, it was really obvious that Citrix app layering was the crack. So it was formerly called Unidesk. Unidesk was a product that was out in the wild for quite a while. It was an acquisition of Citrix a few months back. And I want to just point out what it does and how it works. So today, if you have, who has a VDI infrastructure today? Oh, I love it. Okay, great. So you start out with your pristine golden image, right? We created our golden image, and we thought, okay, now we have this pristine golden image, and maybe you create your golden image, and it's great. It's like a new computer you bought, right? You know, you boot it up, it boots fast, performs well. It's brand new, fresh, clean, crisp image, and it's great. Now we go around customizing that for our different departments, right? I've got these accounting users, and they need Elite, or they need CMS. So now I've got this other golden image that is for my accounting department. Then I have maybe my marketing team has these very specific applications. Now I go around customizing my golden image, and now I've got 3 images. Then you've got your Acrobat users, right? They're like in a cult because they won't get off Acrobat to save their life, and you've got like 3 licenses, and that's it. You're stuck with those. And now you have this Acrobat image. Now we're looking at 3, 4 golden images. Who's with me, right? You don't just have 1, 3 people are smiling. So now I have to patch those images, right? So patch Tuesday, how many am I patching? 1, 2, 3. I've got to update this application. I do it 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So that's the problem that app layering solves. App layering allows you to build an inventory of applications. So, and I don't have time to get into the technical aspects of it, but in essence, you have this, what they call the Elastic Management Console. And you build your application inventory. So I have my platform layer, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and then I have my comparison software. That's a layer, okay? I have my document management system. That's a layer. I have my Acrobat. That's a layer. I have my Elite apps. That's a layer. I have my PDF viewer, whatever your 100 applications, your 45 applications or 200 applications, you build them in a layer, and it's super easy to do. The infrastructure provides you with a VM. You crack it open. You run through the installation process just like you were manually installing it on a PC. Maybe you have to configure it, flip some reg hacks, done. Seal it up, you've got your layer. So you don't have to create an SCCM package. You don't have to create complex VBS scripts. If you can manually install an app on a desktop, you can create a layer. Okay? So now you build your inventory of layers. Once you have your inventory of layers, you create a template. So you say, okay, I have this Windows 7 operating system layer. Okay? In that, we have what we call the platform layer. The platform layer is, I've got my Windows 7 desktop on VMware. So I've got my VMware tools. I'm putting that on the platform layer. I've got provisioning services because it's a PVS image, so I throw my PVS target devices on my platform layer. Antivirus, throw that on my platform layer, okay? Now, you create your platform layer, your Windows 7, your Windows 10 platform layer, and then you have all your different applications that you've created your inventory of. Now you're going to select and create a template. So I want this Windows 7 platform layer, and I want these 6, 7, 8, 12, 25 applications included, and now I've created my template, right? So I have this template, couple clicks of my mouse, it creates in PVS or in MCS or in Verizon View, it creates my vDisk, my golden image, like a newly built machine every time, okay? So now I create 3 templates, 4 templates, 5 templates, depending on how many vDisks I have to manage, couple clicks of my mouse, and I've built all those machines automated. So no more vDisk versioning, no longer required. It's a completely different way of looking at the technology. Okay, let me go to my next slide because it gets even better. Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't do my animation. Sorry, guys. So we talked about having your collection or your inventory of applications, right? Now I create my template. I've selected these applications with this platform layer, and now I have my vDisk. Now, there's another exciting component to this called the elastic layer. So the elastic layer is really cool. The elastic layer says, I can actually take one of those app layers that I've created, and I can deliver it to a user based on their Active Directory identity. So I'm Lisa Stone. I'm logging into the same golden image as the whole firm, but I'm one of those Acrobat freaks that has to have Acrobat, right? So in AD, I am part of this group. When I log into that same golden image as everybody else, I get the Acrobat application plus all the DMS integration that comes with that. Now, that's not a published application. It's not PVD, and it's not app disk. I log in, and it's assigned to me, the user. So the power of that was the previous technologies, PVD, app disk, they were attached to machines, right? Does anybody have PVD in their environment, personal vDisk, app disk? I got a couple. So it's difficult to manage because it's a machine assigned to a user. And then if something happens to that machine, you have to blow that machine away. It's very difficult to FAGU it and then reattach the personal vDisk to another machine. So machine-specific application delivery had its limitations, and I think it had more of a higher administrative overhead. I didn't see a lot of hands go up, probably because of that. Now with this elastic layer, okay, this elastic layer assigned to me, a user, I'm not dependent on any machine. Now there's the possibility that instead of me having 3, 4, 5 images, I can eliminate that by providing the application in the elastic layer. So that's really exciting because you might be able to retire Zen app. You might be able to retire 1 or 2 or 3 of your golden images by throwing those apps in the elastic layer and allowing them to come down based on the user's identity. So I found this very exciting. So again, 2 problems we're solving. Image management. You might want to just grab application layering from Citrix. And if you're a Citrix customer, by the way, it's free. I'm not selling anything. There's nothing to buy here. If you're a Citrix customer, it's free. If you bought Unidesk, you already have it. If you're a View customer, you can buy Unidesk if you don't already have it. So I'm not really selling anything. So layered images for image management, right? So do your Windows update once on the platform layer, spin up all your couple clicks of the mouse, create all your 5 images. I did it one time. Update your application, your comparison software once on that application layer, build that vDisk with the template, couple clicks of the mouse, put it in testing. You don't like it, roll it back, go back to that single layer, modify, change it, tweak it. Again, spin out that crisp, clean, new vDisk for your user population. And then elastic layer, it's a new possibility of how we can deliver applications based on user and not machine, which I find really exciting. I'm going to hand it over to my friend here, Joe.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Lisa. So, as we stated before, my name is Joe Jabbour. I'm a principal consultant at CMD Technology Group. Prior to joining CMD, I was a manager of end-user computing at AmLaw, top 100 law firm, and that's kind of where all of my experience in GPU came. We deployed GPU at scale, and I now kind of consider myself a vGPU advocate. So I'm just going to get right into it here. So a lot of us here raised our hands when Lisa asked how many of us use VDI or XenApp or any sort of, published or hosted applications. Now, how many people use GPUs? Anyone?
Oh, yay.
All right, good. Is it all NVIDIA? Can you raise your hand if you don't use NVIDIA vGPUs? All right. Is it AMD? Intel? Great. So a lot of people that we speak to in the marketplace think of vGPUs and Zen Desktop for your traditional applications such as, your AutoCAD and your Photoshop. And I'm kind of here to tell you, and as Lisa and Mark will attest to as well, that vGPU isn't only for those use cases anymore. You see huge benefits in your web browsing and your Office suite, to name a few. There are many other applications used in legal that can benefit from vGPUs as well. And with newer advancements from Nvidia, AMD, Zen Server, and ESXi, you kind of get to a point where you can also offload CPU computations with those vGPUs. So it's really an exciting place in the marketplace that we are today. All right, so I only have 2 slides, so let me spend some time on this one. So what are our GPU options? As we kind of touched on before, you have 3 options. You have Nvidia, you have AMD, and you have Intel. And there are many different factors to consider when you step back and determine which graphics card is best for my use case and for my price point. Some of those things are performance, cost, user density, hypervisor compatibility, and I just want to, highlight some of those points. So really, let's start with NVIDIA. There's 3 series of cards. About 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, the K-series cards came to the marketplace. There was a NVIDIA K100 card and NVIDIA K200 card. The 100 card was for your normal knowledge worker use case, and the K200 card was for your power users. At that time, you could fit 16 users on the K200 card and 32 users on the K100 card. What NVIDIA did was they kind of replaced those cards with the M60 and the M10 series. The M60 and the M10 series go from Maxwell GPUs from Kepler GPUs rather, to Maxwell GPUs. And what that allowed us to do was double our density. So now the K100 equivalent, which is the M10, can support 64 users instead of 32 users. And the M60, which is the upgrade to the K200 card, can support 32 users instead of 16 users. But when NVIDIA made this change, they also did what all of our favorite hardware and software vendors are doing these days and added a licensing cost. So not only do you have to buy the card, but you also need to pay a pretty hefty price on the licensing, either perpetual with the subscription-based or a per year license. And just to touch on what's next with NVIDIA vGPUs, the new Pascal processors and those GPUs that are coming to the commercial side of the house with gaming PCs and laptops are now moving into the server space and should be released towards the end of the year. So that's a little bit on NVIDIA. AMD Firepro has 3 card models. They have a 7150, a 7150 X2, and a 7100. I'm not going to touch on the 7100 much because that's legacy, but the 2 main cards that you'd buy today if you're going to spec one out for one of your servers are 7150, 7150 X2. These cards both kind of rival only the K100 and the M10 in performance. AMD is new to the game, and kind of at Synergy this year, they really announced their support on Zen Desktop and Zen Server, and they're more for your knowledge worker use case. Unless you're using one of these in pass-through mode and not GPU sharing mode, I'm not going to put an AutoCAD user or a Photoshop user on one of these Firepro cards. The Firepro cards are compatible with Hyper-V and Zen Server, but they only work with Zen Desktop and Zen App. They don't work with Horizon View just yet. AMD is working on that. These cards don't have a licensing cost associated with them, so once you buy the card, you kind of own it and can divvy it up as much as you need to. The 7150 support 16 users, and 7150's X2 support 32 users. And again, those are at a knowledge user workload. And lastly to the game is Intel GVTG. I haven't done much space in the Intel side of the graphics house. I know it's for your knowledge worker use case. You're not really, again, going to put a Photoshop or AutoCAD user on there. And they're really prevalent with HP Moonshot, if there's any HP Moonshot customers here, where you kind of stream a PVS image to a single cartridge, and you could actually give that a GPU. But Intel kind of has their APUs now where they integrate the CPU and GPU on the same chip. So
Cool. Joe, did you want to talk about Azure and how you can?
Yes.
You talked about that earlier, which I think is a good point to bring up.
Yeah, certainly. So Azure and AWS now offer instances with NVIDIA vGPUs and I think Intel vGPUs as well.
Yeah.
And the benefit of that is if you're moving to the cloud, you could still get that performance and you bypass the licensing costs and the hardware costs, where now you pay for an instance type that has a vGPU slice included in it. You don't need to buy the hardware and set it up and add that infrastructure and incur the licensing costs, and you could burst up as need be. And being law firms, and Lisa and I were discussing this earlier today, you might say, we're not too concerned with web browsing, and Office works just fine for us today if we disable the integrated graphics. But we do have a marketing team of 20 users who need Photoshop, and we have no way to move them onto our VDI workload and off their local desktops and still give them that performance that they desire. Amazon, AWS, and Azure with vGPU is a perfect use case for that. And you could also deliver Photoshop as a Zen app application into the VDI that the rest of your firm is using without having to worry about data privacy laws. So
That's cool.
perfect.
Okay, questions?
All right, so we want to open it up for questions now.
David, here he comes. Here he comes.
Question for Joe. How do you spec those cards? So is it as simple as, hey, I got 64 VDI desktops on my server, let me buy a 64 card and a licensing?
Yep, so let's talk about the M10 card, which is the new generation knowledge worker card. So that can be spec'd at a maximum of 64 users, but within that card, you also have multiple profiles. So once you install a card in the hypervisor, you go into your hypervisor and just like, let's take ESXi, for example, and if you want to add CPUs, right, you could give 2 CPUs, 4 CPUs, 8 CPUs. With NVIDIA, there's going to be a drop-down for your vGPU in the web browser, and you can assign it a M10 profile, M10Q profile, M102Q profile, and what these profiles do are they divvy up how many users you can put on one GPU core. So that M10 card has 4 Maxwell GPU cores, and each core can support 16 users at maximum, and that allows each user to have 128 meg RAM buffer cache. Now, if you have, again, I wouldn't call it AutoCAD workers or power users, but if you have users who are, maybe streaming more 4K video or, doing some crazy functions within Excel or PowerPoint, you can divvy that up where you put 4 users on that card, where you have 1 user assigned to each GPU. So really, your minimum is going to be the GPUs on the card, and your maximum is going to be the user density per GPU.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I would comment here. If you have 64 GPUs, and 64 desktops, you're probably pretty close to what you would have as max capacity on any one host, right? So when you're buying a host or when you're buying a server, if you want to add GPUs into the mix, make sure you speak to your rep about, I want something that supports GPUs. You want to put 2 cards in there. You want to see if you can get the max out of each hypervisor. 64 is pretty close to what you're going to get if you did load testing and you got a login VSI max. You're going to be somewhere 65, 75. And then you can put certain users on the GPU desktop and others on a desktop without a GPU. That's another possibility. You can create a collection of machines for the support staff, the receptionists, the office services people, and they don't need a GPU. But then you give the attorneys and the knowledge workers the GPU image. Then you have more saturation of how many machines you can actually divvy up.
Exactly, that's a great point, and just a few quick touch points on that. One, the GPUs aren't vMotion capable yet, or ZenMotion capable. So if for some reason you did lose a host, you're losing all those GPUs. Yeah. But Zen Server is now in tech preview with NVIDIA vGPUs for Zen Motions. And as Lisa mentioned, with the RAM maximum and your login VSI max, if you have 64 vGPU users on a host, you probably want to give each one of those 8 gig of memory, and you can't do memory ballooning if vGPUs are in the equation. So you need to reserve memory. And mixed workloads are supported. So if you have a vGPU in a host, it doesn't mean, as Lisa alluded to, that you only need to have vGPU users on that host. You could have regular instances on that host as well.
There was somebody else who had a question here, David.
Yeah.
You kind of answered my question on the Zen motion with being able to move over the GPUs, but can you talk about when VMware will be able to handle vMotioning over the GPUs?
Yeah, there's an issue with some of the proprietary things that NVIDIA wants to do around the drivers to achieve the performance that violates some of the virtualization architectures that exist today. Without going into detail in terms of timing, I would anticipate sometime over the next 3 to 6 months that issues should be resolved.
Yeah, they're having an issue of memory mapping on the frame buffers.
Right.
And that's great news because everyone's waiting for that.
This is for Lisa. Did you ever consider using Microsoft AppV instead of Unidesk for virtualization of
Yes.
applications?
Absolutely. And a lot of deployments we have already have AppV out there. But you can't AppV VMware tools. You can't AppV PVS target devices. You can't really AppV the antivirus layer, right? So with app layering, we're talking about the drivers and the system services that you can create as a layer and then easily update. Perfect example, you're on ESX 5.x, you want to go to ESX 6, you would have to potentially rebuild the entire image to put the new VMware tools on it for 6.x. If you leverage app layering, you're just going to crack open the platform layer, update the VMware tools, spit out that new beautiful golden image, VMware 6.x tools capable, and put it on that infrastructure. Also, PVS target devices. You couldn't just go in, crack open the image. Well, now you can with the later versions of PVS. If you're on them, you can actually do a PVS target device update on a version of a vDisk. You don't have to do it in the console in VMware or Zen server. But if you have an older version of PVS, you can't do that yet. I think that was like 7.13 or something like that. So what you could do is you have the PVS target device layer, right? So you're saying, oh, I want to upgrade to the newer version of PVS. You just crack open that layer, update the PVS target device software, spit out that new vDisk, throw it on the new PVS server, and you're done. So it's really those drivers and system layers that you can't virtualize with AppV, right? And then there are some applications that just don't work on AppV. It just isn't going to happen to put them on AppV. It just doesn't function properly. So I met the founder and inventor of Unidesk, this gentleman, Chris Migley, and I said, well, how would you sum up your product? He said, this product replaces AppV, personal vDisk, and even profile management, because you can create an elastic layer where the profile's housed. So you can get rid of profile management, and that elastic layer, which is not, again, it's not a separate disk, it's associated with the machine, can come down. And what I didn't mention earlier is these elastic layers, they sit on a file server. It's a couple files. The elastic layer is not some infrastructure component that you have to grab. It could sit up on a DFS share. I log in, I grab that personal layer that could be my profile, or I grab that application layer that could be Acrobat. It's very exciting. I mean, I encourage you to do a proof of concept. It's not that difficult to deploy. I don't think you have to, pay $100,000 in professional services to do a proof of concept. I mean, I think Wookie Far's got one up and running, and they're already updating their images that way. We've got multiple clients that spun up a proof of concept in a matter of days. It's really worth looking at and playing with, especially since there's no cost really associated with it.
And as Lisa said, that elastic layer sits on a DFS share, so it kind of solves all your DR and HA issues, which you run into using personal vDisk, right? That was the big kicker with personal vDisk.
For those customers that are VMware customers, a Horizon product also has similar technology with app volumes. Comes part of the platform as well. It does much of the same concepts in terms of layering that allows you to get much higher degrees of control at lower cost around management. And so the concept of layering specifically for virtualized workloads is one that's becoming pretty prevalent across the industry.
Any more questions? Here we go. Front row, David. Oh, and there's one over there.
So this question is not about app layering, and so if it's kind of out of scope, just let me know. We can maybe talk offline. So we looked at VDI a couple of years ago. We use Zen app servers. We publish full desktops. We didn't go all the way to VDI. And one of the reasons we didn't do that is we thought the ROI did not look good to us because we still had to maintain laptops primarily for our attorneys to travel. So I'm wondering, and again, it's okay if we take it offline, is how do people solve for that issue? You know, how do you go to VDI and allow people to work with data when they don't have a good internet connection?
Are you asking me?
Any of you guys? Anybody in the audience? Too?
I can answer it coming from a law firm that did do it. It's just a sacrifice. It's a give and take. I mean, you benefit in security, you benefit in your administration aspect, but the downside is if you don't have good internet access, you're not going to have a good user experience. Now, VMware's new BLAST protocol and HCX's new protocols have made great leaps in the performance aspect of this, but also with 5G becoming prevalent, hopefully by the end of the year and into 2018, this is going to become much less of an issue. But VMware does actually have a solution for this where they have a technology, and the name escapes right now, but you can cache a copy of your VMware or your Horizon View disk onto a laptop and check it back in, set it to time bomb after 30 days if they don't get on the network. So there are creative ways around that problem, but nothing that's as seamless as a user having a copy of their DMS, their iManage portable folder on their laptop.
And then one question more around the presentation, the layering, that layering you do around the application side, so that I understand that's user-driven and it kind of gets instantiated or whatever when you log in.
Yes.
Do you see any downside in terms of login time and time to boot? Because we always wrestle with GPOs and if it's a second longer than it used to be,
Right.
So if you have your login time can and should be under a minute. The login time can and should be under a minute. We're getting 20 seconds on some VDI desktops, so you want to streamline and optimize because it's very doable. If you don't think it's doable, I'm telling you absolutely it is doable. There is a slight overhead because you have to install an agent on it, but it's very marginal and it's a very slight overhead. And you can always do what I have the mantra of load testing that comes out of my mouth, right? You should always do load testing when you make a significant change to the VDI implementation. If you're going from Windows 7 to Windows 10, you better load test, or you better optimize the crap out of that Windows 10 desktop because it is going to be more CPU memory intensive. So, do your due diligence, do your load testing. And then I want to answer the other question that you asked about VDI versus, meeting the needs of the attorneys. So we talk about any device anywhere, and we can get to a VDI image. And you can secure it, and you can control, copy-paste. You can control access to USB devices. And that's the type of thing that you need to pass your security audits, right? When you're passing your security audits, that's what they want to hear, that's what you're doing. So we don't live in this world anymore where the attorney can come with any device and grab the content of the client. We just do not live in that world anymore. And, with what happened with DL Piper and other firms, we really have to start talking to the attorneys about security has to come first. And there are solutions. You want to travel and have access to content. There's a loaner laptop. I know a firm that issues an iPad, managed, again, Zen Mobile, AirWatch, whatever. You're managing that device. They can potentially get to their documents in their email, which is the majority of what they want. They want their documents in their email. So we have to find ways to let people work remotely on your device, secure devices, if they're not going to be in a VDI environment. And that is really important. In today's world, I speak to attorneys all the time. The Panama Papers was a law firm that was hacked. Your door could close tomorrow because of the mistake that you made on Facebook or whatever, and now you've infected the entire firm, and the phone systems are down, people can't turn their computers on, and we're closed for 7 days. The cost of that is significant. So I encourage you to talk to the attorneys about they are legally responsible for the client content. They have an ethical and legal obligation to protect that. Even if it's not a bank, they have an ethical and legal obligation to protect that data. Our job is to keep it secure, and I don't want to be the IT manager that it was on my watch that we got a breach because somebody was a squeaky attorney and had to have his, grandma's computer and which was full of God knows what that came into my network, right? So I think, again, I've been saying this for years now, we just don't live in that world anymore, and educating the attorneys on that is paramount. But again, find a solution. Loaner laptop, iPad with mobile device management that can access your iManages and your NetDocuments of the world. It works. And people like iPads. People like traveling with iPads. They're lightweight. They're smaller than having the clunky laptop, especially on an airplane. So I think we have to get creative. But we also have to stress security.
Yeah, and if you augment your VDI solution with share file and content locker and kind of enterprise Dropbox-like solutions, you can get to a point where users can cache documents locally on their laptops while they're traveling, and still time bomb them and check them back in.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of us run into the consumerization of IT, where users buy a new MacBook or a new Surface device, and it's super fast, and they can do whatever they want in the subway with no internet access and work on it. But we need to keep driving home what Lisa stated on the security side of things. But with VGP, we're also here to tell you that, and Elastic Layering, that you're not going to sacrifice performance by doing that. Accessibility at times, but that's really the only sacrifice at this point.
So I'll be the contrarian on that position. The marketplace is evolving to the point where IT's ability to actually dictate standards is nearly coming to an end. The fact of the matter is the device diversity, coupled with the velocity of the market, means that IT's ability to stay on top of every situation and scenario for technology is nearly non-capable. So the framework about how you manage has to change. How you think about diversity, how you handle changes within the market in terms of devices, applications, and services really has to be thought about differently. VDI is an answer. It is a great way to provision remote access for provisioning Windows in your data center. Phenomenally good protocols from Citrix, from VMware, from Teradici, and others that really help secure and lock up. But the users really are in control of much more than we think. And again, maybe in the legal industry they're more reserved, or that you have the ability to dictate standards more aggressively. But within the marketplace in general, what we have seen just the opposite effect occur. We have seen IT basically say, you know what, I am done. I can no longer be in the position of being the arbiter of decision-making around technology, whereby my employees not only demand and require, but also have the feeling that they know more about technology than the IT people who are serving them. Right? And so it is a different perspective on how you approach that problem. Right? Again, VDI is a great answer to help solve some of the remote issues around Windows, and it is very reliable and secure and very mature. There's no doubt about it. We benefit, Citrix benefits, et cetera. But the reality is that the marketplace around what your users are demanding go way beyond just the provisioning of Windows. Again, here's a great example. I talked to an account just not too long ago. Senior executive was shopping over at Best Buy, walks down the aisle and sees this massive Samsung refrigerator, 17-inch display, wirelessly enabled. The very first question he asks his IT the next day, he says, when can I get my email on here? Right? Because that is the interface that I want to use so I can be productive in ways that allow me to serve my organization. If you go back to Ford at their announcements at the auto show, the latest Ford Excursion, if I'm not mistaken, 10 displays, 15 USB ports, personal Wi-Fi enabled network. Internal hard drive on the display as well. Right? And so customers are looking at what they perceive as end-user computing to be far more than what things that IT can control and manage from a device point of view. And the change in the velocity of that market is increasing. And so the diversity, it used to be easy when we could standardize on a Windows image and standardize for 15 or 18 or 24 months. Rebuild it when Dell came out with the latest Latitude notebook or whatever it may be. And when Windows had a release cycle that was based on service packs that came out every 18 months, we could actually define a cadence of management that aligned to that. But even Microsoft with Windows 10 has gone away from the idea of doing staged updates in terms of service packs to service branch modeling where they control the updates of the OS just like Apple does on the iOS devices today. And so think about management that goes beyond what you can do today, but think about management in terms of what your people are asking for you. And when you think about it in those terms, you begin expanding the horizon about what needs to be provisioned as part of the service for your applications and for your users.
David, we have a question in the front row over here. Gentleman.
Can't see him. He's behind the pillar.
Yeah,
Right.
hiding behind the pole.
Do you still have a question?
I'm glad you brought that point up because now I kind of want to know what you guys personally, when you bring this to like upper management and the leading body of your organizations, what kind of kickback do you get, or how do you circumvent that and get them to understand because it looks pretty and, you know, you impress your friends, it doesn't necessarily make for a good network.
Right. So I've seen very successful deployments when customers in the IT perspective talk at a position where they basically talk about delivering value for your end users, since really end user computing is about our people, our users. Do it in a way that's cost effective, so you're not going to break the bank. And then fundamentally, is it secure? Can we deliver value that in essence doesn't compromise what an organization is all about? Now, those are very lofty goals, and to achieve those things, there's a variety of things that you need to kind of think about. How do you handle device protection? How do you handle things like bricking a system? How do you handle things like legacy applications and cloud provisioning and business units that actually want to service and acquire their apps independent of you, right? They hire their own developers, or they go to this service that hasn't been vetted as a provider of value, right? These are the kinds of ideas that need to be thought about. So you introduce technologies like identity management. I'd love to see, show of hands, how many customers have actually explored identity management as a core deliverable of IT. I see one, I see two. I will tell you that in terms of the three, EUC, end user computing, it is, if you're not thinking about identity management as a core value, just like you think about imaging, think about applications, think about devices, you need to, because identity really is about the delivery of apps in a way to users that is secure, reliable, easy, and provides great value. You know, the immediate value is things like single sign-on, right? Most of the users in an organization typically have access somewhere between 18 to 28 applications at any given time. Could be web apps, could be published apps, could be Citrix apps, could be mobile apps on a phone, right? How do you manage that in an effective way when each one of those systems has a different set of requirements around passwords, ID lengths, duration? Is it 90 days, 60 days? Is it capital letters? Do I need special characters or not, right? This is the reality of how users are consuming IT applications and services. And so identity is the value that you stick above it that allows users to introduce one set of credentials that applies to all those things, regardless if the app is serviced on your file share, as a Citrix app, as a published app under Verizon, or Horizon, I should say, if it is through Amazon, if it is a cloud-based or SaaS app. The idea is that you can federate to all those infrastructures in a very simple way. Great value to the users, highly secure, highly reliable, but it requires investment in areas that you may not be ready to do just yet. Right? Again, identity management is big. How do you handle device management? We firmly believe that in order to manage end-user computing, device management is at the front and center. It means that you'll be able to know the known state of a device. We have a tool called AirWatch. This is what we've done forever. We're in the Magic Quadrant of Gartner. What we do is look at all devices to validate that the user has set the right set of credentials and that the operating system has not been compromised in any way. And you apply policy to that basically says, is their user using this technology in the right context? Day of week, week of month, location, network. These are all based on ways in which IT now is going to begin thinking. It's no longer a linear switch, right? It's no longer an on-off kind of thing called VPN. Give them a VPN, gain access to the world, right? That doesn't work anymore. A per-app kind of model needs to apply that is based off of policy, based on context, that makes sense to the user. These are the evolutions that are happening in the world of end-user computing that go beyond just the provisioning of a Windows app to a user that I think most organizations really need to start thinking about.
All right.
With hybrid SaaS, it's like apps are coming from everywhere, right? You need something to unify that from a directory perspective.
Everybody remember the video game Missile Command, right? The console, where the bombs start. You try to roll the ball, and we're at a point now where there's far too many missiles. We don't have enough bombs to defend it all. That's reactive IT, right? And so it's a fundamental belief. It's the thesis that I have. It says, look, you have pretty much lost the ability to control what's happening inside of the world of your end users from an EUC point of view, just based on the diversity and the velocity of the market, right? And if you agree with that, it means that you have to rethink the problem of how you handle management beyond what you're doing in terms of a prescriptive model. Prescriptive is still very good. You still may need VDI for the right use case. And thin clients can service your Windows needs. And there may be scenarios of where you have individuals who are best served by that as the only thing that you provision. But when you think outside the realm of more than what VDI can provide and what users want, we really think that customers need to think a little bit differently about the delivery of apps and services.
Any other questions?
So does Windows 10 change any of this? Does Windows 10 change the way we deal with the delivery of applications or manage the applications? Is there fundamental differences between that and Windows 7?
Yes. So there's a lot of people that don't realize that Windows 10 is not the same operating system that we've seen before. And it's mostly because of how Microsoft has decided to make updates far more in line with how the mobile market has evolved. In the mobile space, there's something called EMM, Enterprise Mobile Management, that in essence says, we'll rely on the vendor to handle the updates and servicing of the device. Your ability to patch iOS or Mac OS is really not the realm of the user, but more so of the vendor, right? And Microsoft actually toyed with this with called Windows Update. If you remember when they introduced that, I think in Windows NT, as a matter of fact, that long ago. But the idea is that you're going to rely on Microsoft to handle the updates of the operating system. And so your ability to actually service and manage Windows as you've done before is evolving. Even Microsoft says that long term, as you migrate into Windows 10, an EMM approach to the management of that environment is going to be the optimal way to manage Windows moving forward. So why is this important? It means because that the cadence behind operating system updates is no longer under your control. And it's going to happen dynamically within the OS itself. So as a device connects to the network, it will say, all right, you're 9 months old with this version, time to apply the patch for version 1703, right? And it will come down whether or not you are ready. And so we tell customers is that think about managing applications almost independently of Windows if you can. App layering is a great way in terms of isolating the effect of an operating system on an application. Provisioning VDI is another great way to kind of freeze time around an image that is known, static in state, right? But for the market, in terms of what Windows means, is that you're going to see a far more aggressive update strategy applied to the devices called PCs that we've ever seen before that Microsoft has done. The good news is one final piece. Well, that's all different, right? And different can mean more challenging for some customers. The good news is that this is going to be pretty much the last major update from Microsoft. That all future versions of Windows are going to come through this update model. And so instead of buying Windows 10 or 11 or 12, you'll upgrade to Windows 10 and you'll be on release 1703, right? Or 1806. They go year, month is how they do that, right? So you'll just subscribe to Windows long term and you'll get the latest release of what version that may be. And that's how Windows will continue to be provisioned within the marketplace. So it's kind of like a dynamic, always evolving platform. No longer are we staging Windows based on versions or by certain dates that are predicated on things like service packs.
I'd like to add something. Windows 7 versus Windows 10 in VDI, right? So if we're talking about VDI, Windows 7 versus Windows 10 are different in terms of what you need in your infrastructure environment. Windows 10 is a lot more CPU memory intensive than Windows 7 is. There's a lot of stuff that just runs in the background, including stuff like Xbox that we don't want. So you need to, literally, you need to optimize Windows 10. VMware has a great tool that you can even use in your Citrix vDisk. It's a VMware Optimization tool where it will optimize your Windows 10 desktop for a VDI vDisk that will perform better and not chew up unnecessarily CPU memory utilization. And again, my mantra, load test. You are a Windows 7 VDI shop. You spec'd your infrastructure for a Windows 7 VDI desktop. You want to go to Windows 10, Office 2016. You build that image, you load test it. What's my saturation point on Windows 7? What can I comfortably fit on my infrastructure in Windows 7? You better know that number. You better know that number. And then I'm building Windows 10. How many can I comfortably fit on my infrastructure? You need to know that number, because if you don't, you're going to have a poor performance and users are going to be unhappy with their virtual desktop experience. Yes, David?
No, 5 minutes.
I was just going to say, last thing on that question. We're at a point now you kind of summarize both your points, where we need to start thinking about Windows in two forms. One, Windows on the end user device, and two, Windows in our data center. Windows in our data center is still needed to install applications. If we're doing Zen apps, Lisa alluded to VDI in Windows 10, but Windows on the user endpoint is kind of going towards that Windows 10 S model, where it's kind of a lockdown desktop, and you only have access to the App Store, and you get Citrix Receiver in the App Store, you get AirWatch Agent in the App Store, you get the Zen Mobile Agent in the App Store, and everything's delivered in that way. I mean, that's kind of where I see it going with Windows 10 in the next 3 to 5 years.
Any other questions?
One more.
I want to wait for the mic.
Last one.
Thank you. Hi.
So quick question maybe about security. Then when we're using the layers, do you patch all the, they come out with patches every month for all the apps. Do you have to rebuild the layers every month, when a new patch for Office comes out?
When you say you come up with patches for the applications every month, if you look at your version of, let's say you have WorkShare in your environment, you're on version, I don't know what the latest is, 7.9. You're going to stay on that version for a while, and then you're going to beta test another version of that, right? So you would crack open the app layer for that application, WorkShare, CompareDocs, whatever it is. You would change the configuration and update it to version, whatever the latest version is, create your new vDisk, then put that in your staging environment, make sure it works for you, roll it back, roll it forward, do your updates, and deliver it. So as opposed to previously in the traditional VDI environment without app layering, I would have to copy my golden image, crack it open, uninstall WorkShare, install the later version of it, and do it that way. Again, we're fiddling and fiddling and fiddling. And if you don't have a good Citrix administrator that doesn't really, keep track of what they've done. I mean, I've been at clients that I don't remember what I did on this version versus that version. You have that type of person who manages the vDisk. This is a way of controlling that it's what the vDisk is going to look like. You know exactly what happened to it. Now, with regard to operating system updates.
Or what about Office? Because they come out with patches all the time.
Yeah, so when you can have your OS layer include Office 2016 or 2013. Then you crack that layer open, your operating system layer with Office included in it. And then you patch it. You do your monthly patch, right? Then you do the same thing. You spin up a new golden image, put that in a staging environment like you do today, have your users test it, make sure Microsoft didn't break something with Outlook and long file names, or what did they do recently with exclamation points or multiple periods in it, right? Remember that patch that just came out? So yeah, she's nodding. So you do something like, you do it that way, but you do the Windows update and the Office update in that layer, in the OS layer. I would suggest, because we have so many third-party applications that integrate with Office, I would suggest building the OS layer with your Office layer together. Then you patch that, because you're going to get your Windows updates and you're going to get your Office updates in that layer right there. So I would build the layer that way, because we don't usually flip between Office 2013 and Office 2016 easily. There's just too many dependencies. There's too many third-party apps that we have to play around with and figure out, is it going to work? Can I use 32-bit, 64-bit, DMS, file site, yada, yada, yada. So that's a big decision, changing the Office suite. So I would package that on the OS layer. Yeah, you're welcome. Nice to meet you.
If there are no other questions, we only have a minute left anyway. I want to thank the panelists, Mark, Lisa, and Joe. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. Please fill out your evaluations. It's the only way ILTA knows what to give you in programming. Thank you.